Hey everyone, welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the best version of yourself. If you're new here, we're excited to have you here. Growing every day, truly, what our podcast is about is growth, and because it was kind of my idea to start it. And obviously Cesar just is really a great support system for me, and obviously agreed to do this with me. Just because I'm still at such a very important time in my life for growth. Your 20s are difficult, like so difficult. I feel like as of recently, there's been a lot of conversation about that in like how difficult your 20s can be, because previously it's been like your 20s are the best time of your life. Not my experience, but that's okay. And I kind of just want to have a platform to talk about what I've experienced as I've been trying to grow and work towards the person I want to be, both professionally and both personally, and kind of merging those two concepts. So if you're new here, that's what you can expect, and that's what we're going to continue to do every week. And Cesar is my lovely fiance.
Hello.
I love him. How are you feeling today, Cesar?
Okay. I'm feeling all right.
It's been a rough morning.
Yeah.
It's actually like 4 p.m. now. Just lots going on here. Lots we're trying to figure out too. Like we said, we're learning and we're growing, and there is a lot of trial and tribulation and kind of figuring out what the do I do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of what we're experiencing right now, which is perfect for today's episode. I wanted to talk about the concept of intrusive thoughts. And the title of this episode, if you're watching this video on podcast or listening to this video on podcast platforms or watching this on YouTube, you'll see the title includes the term like, am I a fraud? And I put that in the title because that's one of the intrusive thoughts I have almost every single day. The concept that I'm a fraud, like just in my life, that the person that I'm working to be and trying to be, because I'm not quite there yet, I'm a fraud. Or I don't know if it really makes sense when I explain it, but I can feel like, am I who I say I am? Am I doing my best? Especially especially more so doing this podcast, because I am promoting so much about growth and also growing at the same time. When I'm feeling like stunted in this like growth journey, I can start feeling like, well, who am I to help people? Who am I to put this out there if I'm not perfect myself?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I think if you even talk to some of the biggest podcasters about business or finance or technology, like they all started somewhere,
Yeah.
So they started at the learning stages of whatever it is they're trying to talk about. And I imagine a lot of them like had that same problem in regards to like, am I actually qualified? Like, what makes me an expert in that sense, right?
Or like, what makes me the one able to do this? I think to start out, we should kind of identify like, what exactly are intrusive thoughts? And according to like this therapy website, I'm so bad at quoting things, but I wrote it down. I didn't like write down the source, which I need to be better about, but they're unwanted thoughts that can pop into your head without like any warning. Like they just happen. And they're often like triggered by like stress and anxiety, which makes sense for me because I am constantly stressed and anxious. I feel like that's just innate inside me. But I think that for me, it's important to talk about because growing up, I've always had very intrusive thoughts. I've always had these thoughts that have followed me to today, but never acknowledged that they were intrusive, and also thought that this is how everyone thinks, like everyone thinks this way. And it's kind of one of those situations where you don't know until you don't know that this isn't something that you have to deal with. This isn't something that you have to struggle with for the rest of your life.
I know exactly what those can be, personally speaking. I think we all can look back at a scenario where we're like overly, I guess, like stressed out or whatever the case is, and you get those thoughts running through your head, like, for example, like title of this podcast, like, am I a fraud, or can I actually accomplish this?
Or am I in over my head?
Or are you in over your head? Like, fill in the blank in regards to that, right? There can be other thoughts that go through other people's minds, like whether, and we're hearing this a lot, I can't remember from where, but like people that are new parents, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I even fit to be a parent? That's a thought that some people have.
You feel like you're an awful parent.
Yeah, or that too. Am I being a good parent? And stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot that you can just talk about, just the thought process behind like why they happen.
Well, they happen frequently because you're stressed and anxious, and it's not like, I think the most important thing from what I understand, and I may be wrong, so if anyone's listening, you're like, no, you're wrong, please let me know. It's an unconscious thing. Like, you don't really recognize how, like, you can understand that they're triggered by stress and anxiety, right? But you almost don't recognize them as, like, you aren't trying to think those things, right? You aren't actively like creating these thoughts. They're thoughts that just come up. That's why they're called intrusive, because like you have like, your regular functioning thoughts, and then they're like right to the forefront. And obviously, I think even just talking about like generally, like, if you have a positive thought and a negative thought, you're probably going to focus on the negative more. Like, it's just kind of innate in us. And I think that they're very hard to stop. Like, where do you go? I know one of the things that I struggle with and have for like all of my life, like, I always joke with my manager about it, but it's like a legit thought I have. It's like, oh, is like today the day I'm getting fired? Like, a meeting that you weren't planning for gets scheduled. Am I getting fired? Like, and you have no reason to believe that you're getting fired. Like, no, like, you haven't received any feedback about doing bad at your job. But it's still one of those thoughts that, like, whenever I have a meeting, especially if my CEO is in it, I'm like, I'm getting fired. I was like, hey, why doesn't he need a mic? Like, I'm getting fired. And it's never that. Like, it literally is never that. But like I mentioned probably previously on the podcast, is like, it's one of the ways that like we often worry about things that are less likely to happen because they're actually safer to worry about, because I feel like deep down we know it's not going to happen, but it's still safe to worry, like, what do I do in this case scenario, and that's something that I've had to try to like mitigate in my life, because when you have these thoughts, they can be like very, I don't know, debilitating, but also like just, it's like, what do you do? Like, how do you approach like moving on? Like, for instance, like if you're working and you have one of these thoughts, like it can be very counterproductive. Like, you might have a lot to do, and then you're having all these thoughts, and it's like you don't do anything, Yeah, no,
it can mitigate you from doing.
I don't think mitigate's the word.
I'm sorry, maybe mitigate might not be the right word. It can stop you right then and there from like doing anything else, especially if it's something that, again, like if it's triggered by stress, if you're worried about maybe you're looking for work, or you're trying to plan a project out, or whatever the case is, and you get these thoughts about like that are negative, obviously, like you're trying to be a positive person and or whatever the case is, but the moment those happen and they hit you, it can for some, it can just completely stop you from like wanting to do anything that day. Or maybe you're just like, it kind of, like someone will say like, oh, you just ruined my day, like I'm pretty sure you've come across people that have said that, like, man, like that happened and now my day is ruined. And then like it can stop people from doing things.
And it's hard to like not have
you know what I'm coming from though, right?
It's like man, I don't even know how to move forward. It's like that. I remember I used to get so stressed out to the point like the only thing I could do was nothing. Like nothing at all. And the fact that I was doing nothing was stressing me out even more, because you knew you had something to do and you weren't working, but there was like, even doing the thing, you were going to be stressed. So it's like, there's no happy ending there. It's funny because I came to this podcast, like this episode, with not exactly a solution in mind, but more just kind of wanted to open the conversation as to like what you thought, like, how do you deal with that? Especially like, it's one thing to have like one intrusive thought. Like if you have one intrusive thought a day, like depending on what that thought is, you might be able to deal. Like you might be able to like,
No, I imagine most people do deal with like intrusive thoughts daily. Like whether it's like let's say they're at work and they're like, oh, dang, I need to, I don't know, mow the lawn before HOA gets me. I don't know, like some random thing, right? Like, and that could be like a thought that like just pops in on their like things of to-do lists that are intrusive, that in that sense that shouldn't stop
I
you
don't
from,
think
you know.
that's intrusive though. I
It's
think
like
more
just,
so like, you know, like ones that I mentioned, like, oh, I'm getting, like, I'm telling, oh, man, I'm gonna get fired, or oh, you're going to fail. So like a lot of the you're going to fail thought like prevents a lot of people from either getting started or keeping going, but like continuing on.
Yeah.
You know, like you're gonna fail or this won't work out. I'm talking about like thoughts like that where it's like you're doing something and you're working towards something, but you're halted because you keep on having these things like I want, like something I deal with. Sorry, I don't want to make this all about me and my issues, but I have this like feeling of how like there are some days where I'm so confident and I'm so like, yes, let's like motivated and keep like, let's work towards my goals and we're going to be a bad business bitch, like that kind of thing. And then there's other days where I'm like, I'm never going to be successful. I was like, I don't have what it takes to be successful. Or what if I never get out of this hole? And those thoughts can be so like crippling. And something I've been trying to do more recently is like just think about, okay, what's causing me to feel like this way? Okay, what brought that thought into my mind? What event was it, you know? Because usually it's tied to like something that someone said to you, or, you know, this idea that other people are judging you. And so you think about why am I feeling this way? Okay, is my thought based on like fact or feeling? Is it just merely a feeling that you're not going to be successful, or is it a fact? And most of the time it's not a fact. A lot of times we react heavily with our feelings than we do with facts, and I feel like that's human nature, and it's something I definitely do because I've got a lot of emotions, and most likely I'm feeling all of them all at once, angry, sad, happy, all of it. And it can cause you to really not be able to distinguish the two, like what's true and what's not, and what can I act on and what can't I. And it's really hard. Like it requires an insane amount of self-awareness, which I think is just really the hardest part of the process, is being completely self-aware, you know, of those things. And I think that's the hardest thing, and why people like continue to struggle with it.
I mean, not to say like everyone needs a little bit of self-awareness. I think there's like a, what is it, like IQ or EQ? No, it's emotional intelligence.
That's a little bit different than self-awareness.
No, that's I mean, well, the first thing that pops to my mind about like being self-aware is the, you know, obviously the physical stuff that's around you, you know, like, you know, when you go to the gas station, I always tell Sunny, hey, be self-aware about your surroundings.
I'm never on my phone in a parking lot anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I mean, it's a sad thing to say, but like, you just never know, right? Or when you're driving, you know, you're extremely self-aware. That's the thing about Sunny. It's not that
I'm too self-aware to where it makes me so anxious.
I tell her all the time that I think we talked about this on another podcast, how she could be an amazing like race car driver because she sees like the littlest things like so far ahead, like that car's about to turn, and for her it's like stop, slow down, or whatever the case is. But for some, if you can unlock that, and not unlock that, but use that as a way to like become like, if you wanted to be a professional driver or something like that, right?
I'm in the wrong career.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because you have really good self-awareness in regards to driving. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is like just the physical. But then there is the I guess like the emotional self-awareness.
The emotional, mental, like, okay, you can be aware of your surroundings, but like identifying your emotions, understanding your emotions, understanding like who you are as a person. And it's so funny because I think we can operate so long in our lives without actually understanding why we are the way we are. I would say like growing up, I had no idea why I was the way I was. I just was, you know, this was who I am. This is my set of cards, and there's nothing you can do to change it. And that was really kind of my mindset like as a teenager, because I didn't really think of it as like I do now. And now I'm like, okay, I understand why certain things bother me. I understand what like triggers me in certain situations, and some of that can help you better navigate those kind of situations in the future. But I do think at the same time, even understanding sometimes doesn't help. Like, you can understand that something's going to bother you, but the other half is like, okay, well, how do you stop it from bothering you, or not getting completely derailed when that kind of thing comes up? And I think that's the other half of it, is like intrusive thoughts often, like, we might be able to pinpoint where they're coming from, or maybe why we're feeling that way. Like sometimes I've had like a really stressful day at work, or just like in my personal life, I'm really trying to figure out all of these things, my life out, and trying to do that all at once can really make you feel like, well, you're not even capable of this because you're here now because of your own stupidity, you know? Like, so I think that can really derail you. So it's a really difficult point to be at. It's even when you're self-aware, you then have the half of it where you need to figure out it's like unlearning and relearning. And I think that's the most stressful thing, is like when you grow up learning one thing and then have to like teach yourself to do another that's completely opposite of what you learned, you know?
Yeah.
It goes back to like, you know, how we had an episode about how, you know, specifically there's some like cultures and some families where you don't share emotion, as like you aren't vulnerable, like you keep it all inside, you hold it all inside. So learning to then share your emotions and open up is very hard for some people because they grew up never doing that. I mean, I would say it's hard for you because like you don't really ever really open up. Like I'd say very few times, because you that's how you grew up, you know. It's because of like your upbringing. And that's the other thing, is there's so much of who we are like has to do, you know, with our environment and where we come from.
Yeah.
And that can be kind of chaotic in your mind when you're like, wow, I grew up completely differently. I don't even think that makes sense grammatically, but I grew up differently, and now the person I want to be doesn't align with how I grew up. But at this point, all you know is what you know. So then you have to kind of continue to uncover what you don't know and learn about it and learn about yourself. And it's a whole journey, and it never stops. And I think for me, that stresses me out.
Is what, the journey itself, or like just not knowing that it's never going to stop? That you're always going to be, you're always going to be thinking of, or you're always going to have intrusive thoughts that like make you think like, you know, maybe I should be doing something else, or maybe, or like, or
I don't
what's
think
the
it's
case?
the journey itself. Like I try to like continue to tell myself like, you know, there's the beauty in the process of becoming who you want to be. I think the thing that kind of stresses me out is that I think the person that I'm going to be is always going to be a moving target. You know, like I might get to like who I want to be in 5 years, but then that 5 year, like me 5 years from now is also going to want other things. And the idea of always going to having to continue and continue and continue. And I know growth is a continuous process, but I think that thinking about it sometimes can really be like, I just want to feel like peaceful. And I think both can coexist. Like you could feel peaceful and also be working on yourself. But like currently I'm not in the place where it feels like there's peace. It feels like it's all chaos and I'm just trying to sort things and then continue on. It's like Mario Kart. Like, you know how like, you know, you're driving and there's banana and then there's everything and everything's hitting you. And like, you're like, shit, I keep running into these bananas. And I keep like, it pushes you backwards. And I think that happens a lot, is like when you're on like this kind of path to like really trying to focus on your growth, but you've also got a lot going on in your life. It's like you keep slipping on these bananas, and like it doesn't mean you can't continue to move forward, but like it takes you back a little bit, and then you move forward and like you might get back a little bit. So it's like 1 step forward, 3 steps back, or you know, even sometimes 1 step forward or 1 step and then going backwards. So it's like constantly moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that can be really stressful, because again, I think we mentioned this so many times on the podcast, so we all want to feel like we're moving forward in our lives, like doing something good, or there's just so much around it that, I mean, you've probably felt like that, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just started thinking about the fact that, like, when I was in my early 20s, the different, like, I wouldn't say like the mindset I had, but more of like what I, you know, like you were talking about, like 5 years ahead, like where do you see yourself? What I saw myself doing back then is nothing what I'm doing now. You know, in regards to, because I had a different, not to say like outlook on life, but I saw like different potentials in what I was doing. And at the time I was just, you know, designing and like manufacturing products, like soft goods. And I saw, oh, this can be a possibility, you know, doing this. I literally learned everything from the software down to like sewing and all of that, and I saw something good in it at the time, right? And at the time, like obviously I didn't really have any intrusive thoughts about like this isn't going to work or whatever the case is. But looking back to today, and like just how you can get like these certain thoughts running in your mind that can make you think that you're not going to be good enough at the end of the day. I think coming back to the solution that we were talking about was like, if we were doing this conversation, you kind of just wanted to like have a conversation. I think the only solution that I see is just continuing to, it's not to ignore the problem or the issues
and just put it in a box.
And just put it like, you know, like in the back of your mind. It's to continue to work towards a solution. You know, as long as you're working towards a solution, I think that's something that can help you stop, you know, having those thoughts. Which is why, like, I think of it in simplest terms, like the HOA thing I just said a second ago. Like, you could be working in the middle of the day, I don't know, whatever it is that you do, and then you have a thought of like, dang, like that dang HOA, they keep finding me for having you know, a weed or two in the front like of the grass. So what do you got to do? Like, if you can't hire someone to clean it up, you have to do it yourself. And
it's like problem solving, like,
yeah, it's like problem solving, you know. And
you know, that's actually funny that you mentioned that about like being at work and then thinking about that. For the longest time, that's why I couldn't sleep. Like I couldn't go to sleep, especially when I was working at Target, because I worked so late and I had to get home and I wouldn't be able to sleep because I have all these thoughts about tomorrow and like. But even now, like,
or even the night before,
I literally had a dream about a client last night of like, oh crap, and it like reminded me of some things I need to do today. So it kind of like was good, but I would think so much about like the next day or like, you know, what else I need to do, and my mind just couldn't shut off because I was thinking about all of these things like that needed to be done. And like that, thinking of it like that, like not being able to separate, like that can be super unhealthy. Like you'll lose sleep, like it can
like, again, it can prevent you from doing the tasks that you need to do.
Yeah. And, or not even like prevent you, just continue to stress you out. Like you'll continue to have like this high like level of stress. And I was talking to my mom the other day, like I think it was a couple days ago, and telling her that I was trying to better identify my feelings, and you know, I've been journaling and all this stuff of like, so I can like not feel this way that I do, like not feel all of these emotions so intensely, or like, you know, just better, you know, navigate them. And she was like, I just don't think that's gonna help. She told me she doesn't think it's gonna help because, like, you know, personally that would just make her, you know, more overwhelmed, is what she said, I think, or something along those lines. And it's funny because I am a lot like my mom. I know that a lot of the feelings that I feel, I get from my mom, because my mom's a worrier and I'm a worrier. I can't say that word because it has R's. Worrier.
She can't roll her R's, so if you guys are wondering.
I can't say any of my R's very well, but yeah, I worry a lot. And I think a lot of times I've been thinking about it more because I can't continue. I told my mom, I was like, the reason I'm doing this is because I can't continue on this route and it be like not affect not just my mental health, but like my physical health. Like I think a lot of the way I feel physically, like with congestion and like waking up with sore throats and not feeling like all there, is because I stress myself out so much. Some of it isn't even work. Like it's not that my work environment is stressful, because I love the work environment that I have. It's that I'm stressing myself out. And I have a tendency to do that where I make things more stressful, I think, than they need to be. Not to say that like my life isn't stressful at all and that I'm making it up, but you know, some days are stressful and that's just how they are. But I stress myself out to the point like I can't like function as well as I normally could. I'm just functioning on like this high stress inducing like thing. And I told her, I was like, can't continue to do this. I was like, I know it's not healthy for me. I was like, I just have a really bad feeling that this isn't healthy for me and it isn't gonna end well for me if I don't start really looking at myself and figuring out how I can make things better for myself. And that comes like how I react in situations, or how I react when I have these intrusive thoughts, it all has to do with that. And I know that there's work that I can do that can make things better. I haven't figured out exactly what it is yet, but it's starting slow. Like journaling, I think helps me a lot to better understand like when I'm feeling upset and like, what am I feeling? And then reading it back, okay, why was I feeling this way? Like, and so I'm trying to do that more. It's like,
and that's good. I mean, that sounds like a good solution to those that are having intrusive thoughts, is like maybe writing them down. Like maybe not writing them there, like if it's something you're trying to figure out for yourself, but write them down and then come back to it later and be like, why am I having this thought? If it's something as simple as HOA, obviously, duh. But if it's something more difficult to figure out, maybe that's when you probably should maybe talk to someone about it.
Exactly. And I think the other thing, I did this week because I was like, it was more for me, but I think it's also good for my team. We have a weekly call with me, my coworker, and our manager, and it's like a sync up of the three of us. We're a small team, but I created the outline for the call, what we needed to discuss. But like at the top of it, I put like wins, and the reason I did that was because I think the conversations that we have can often be talking about things that are kind of stressful or like things that we just need to figure out and can kind of like leave us like, shit, we still got so much work to do. That I also want to highlight like what we've done that was good and like what we have created thus far. Because I think a lot of times when you just focus on what you still need to do, it can stress you out. It can make everything much worse. If you focus on like, well, I did this and these were wins for the week, like that can put like kind of a better positive spirit and like have you prepared to have the conversations about that, the conversations that might make you a little more stressed out would be like, okay, like how are we gonna do this? And it definitely put me in a better mood for the call and like I feel like it was a more productive call on like my end because I was able to provide really good feedback and really good solutions with my coworkers. And like, yeah, I was like, that's something that was just so small that I feel like completely helps me in my mind kind of shift the narrative of how I think. Not that the calls ever really go bad, but there's just so much work we got to do still to make things better. And I think that can be stressful, is like the idea of like, we're not where we want to be yet, but we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Help us continue to keep things positive. I think that's the main thing, is because intrusive thoughts tend to be so negative. You've got to find ways to make things positive and kind of take the bull by the horns. I know there's a lot of people, and I have been one of those people that hate confrontation. Like there's a lot of people that don't like confrontation, and there have been times in my life where I didn't want to bring something up because I knew that the problem would cause me more stress or the other person more stress. But I realized, okay, like sometimes we just got to bring it, things will get worse before they get better, so you need to bring it up so we can get better. And that has helped me a lot too when growing, or especially like in the startup environment. It's helped me a lot. And I think a lot of people give themselves kick themselves for mistakes they made. That's something that I do, and I think that it's like, I'm like how do I not know everything? How did I mess this up? Like I think
that's also something that we have to remember, is that that we don't know everything. You're always learning,
and that's okay.
And it's okay. Yeah, you got to continue learning. That's whatever it is that you do, even if it's not in your profession. Maybe it's something that you're learning on the side or whatever it is. But there's always something new to learn, especially if it has to do with your job that you do, whether it's technical or not. There's always something, unless it's like carpentry, maybe. Then I don't know. I feel like everything carpentry related has been figured out, but. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. That's what I think, but maybe there is something new to learn.
I was kicking myself for not knowing everything, and I think a lot of people do that. You feel so stupid because you make a mistake, and then if you reflect on the mistake, you're like, okay, where did I go wrong? And it's like, should I have known? If you should, like, still, we're human. We make errors. I literally made such a stupid mistake earlier in the week, and I was like, dang it, Sonny, you are so stupid. It's not productive to get mad at myself for this. Like, I'm human, I make errors. We just have to make sure we do better next time. The mistake is over and done with. You just can't know everything ever. You can't predict things. And I think that's like where we have to kind of give ourselves like space to be like, oh yeah, I couldn't have known, or I shouldn't have known, or, I think we kick ourselves a lot for not being perfect, and there's just no way to be. Like, honestly, if it was that easy, like, we wouldn't be as probably depressed as we are, but,
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's okay to know that you don't need to know everything, I mean, we're humans. We're not like a computer where you can save all that information. Even if you could know everything, you couldn't remember it all.
But even like if you think about like computers and knowing everything, like there's still like, oh, you think about technology, you think that like it can like there's certain perfect things about it, but then it still fails, like even like while things are great, like things still fail. And I think that's still just beautiful, like in the sense that like, yeah, we are at the end of the day, like we're human and we will mess up, and it's not about like preventing those, but like learning from it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's hard because like sometimes you're spending so much time kicking yourself over something, and then you don't realize like this was, while probably not your ideal outcome, it's something that you can learn from and use to then get to where you want to be.
Yeah, apply whatever it is you learn to the next thing, right?
I think the problem that comes is like, whether you're having intrusive thoughts or, you get kicked down by something that happened in your life. It's the getting back up that is probably, I would say, it's just hard, like getting back up when you're down and when you don't always feel like you have a reason to get back up. It's like we mentioned before on your podcast, changing the way your mind, like it's like we constantly have to rewire our minds, like connect the blue with the red, or like, and like you're like, wait, I'm colorblind. So like sometimes it's hard to really change that thought process. It's not like overnight. Like, yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna think entirely differently than the way I do today. No, it's like small things. It's like, okay, start with how you react in certain situations, then like start, like it's just such a mental battle, and it's not just a flip of the switch. And I think because as humans we want things so easily, it's very sad. It's such a bad adjective, but it's just very sad when it's just not that easy. It's not as simple as flipping a switch and everything's good. But if you've lived on this earth long enough, you just know that nothing in life is like that. I think the other thing that probably comes into play is like that, because people think that things can be as easy as that because people sometimes make it seem like that. Like, oh, that looks so easy. Or they make they frame it to a way like, oh, it's so easy. And it's just really not. It's just lying, because it's not. Like to say like, oh yeah, you want to lose 20 pounds? Easy. No. Depending on what you were doing before. Okay. Like someone was saying the reason, I saw this TikTok not today, but the other day, that was like, if you want to eat healthier, it immediately cutting out the foods that you like is not going to be sustainable. Like, all the food that you're going to eat then is going to taste disgusting because of what you're used to. Like, if you go from eating, like, fried chicken to, like, trying to eat a salad, yeah, you're not going to like it. You're going to be like, oh, this is disgusting.
I mean, depending on who you talk to, salads actually aren't healthy at all either.
Well, okay. Well, besides the point. That's besides the point. But, like, it's about, like, then doing it in tiny steps. Like, not completely eliminating or, like, But the thing is, people approach things so drastically, I think, sometimes, where they feel like they have to change this automatically into where it's just not sustainable. And we talked about that, I think, last week on the podcast, too. It's just not a sustainable way. And it's funny that video got pushed to me because I am trying to eat healthier. And one of my struggles is that when I am stressed out, I want to eat, like, all the snacks. Like, not eat full meals. I'll skip meals, which is also bad for you. But I'll just eat, like, little snacks here and then. I'm like, this is so bad for me, but I get such comfort because it's like, this is something I can control. So like, definitely an unhealthy relationship I have with food. And I was talking to Alyssa a while ago about this, and I was like, she was like, maybe it's not snacking, but changing what those snacks are, and like still stuff you like, because I do like some of the foods I like are healthy. It's like I could probably switch out my chips with something like more like healthier feeling, like granola bars, or something that's not as like bad for me, and start there.
Yeah.
I think it's just completely for me. If I just try to take them away all at once, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all really depends on who you are as a person and what you can, and your limitations.
Yeah.
What in a sense, like we can link this back to the podcast. Is intrusive thoughts is like maybe when you're stressed out, you're like that thought of like, man, I need to go grab something to eat. That could in a sense be like a thought of like, maybe what if I just no, I'm not gonna eat that thing, and that could be an intrusive thought.
But even, or not even that, I'm not gonna eat that thing,
Yeah.
or like, let me make something that's gonna give me energy, and let me make me like, cause like, yeah, like I'll be like, oh, I need to eat something today. What is that gonna be? Like, obviously, you shouldn't stop yourself from eating, like especially if I have eaten. Most of the time when I'm thinking, yeah, I'm hungry, it's because I haven't eaten anything.
Yeah.
So like
exactly.
not like it's being more specific, or like, okay, let me make something more nutritious and it's gonna like take care of my body, and frame it in that like a way that you want to take care of yourself. And I'm working on it. I'm trying not to snack. It's just so hard. I just love snacks. I'm like, I grew up that way too. That's the other thing is I grew up with always eating snacks, but I also was eating healthy meals. Like my parents cooked. My mom cooked a lot growing up, and then but she also bought like bomb snacks. I'm telling you, all the neighborhood kids were over at our house to get our snacks because we had good snacks.
Yeah, one of my neighbors had all the snacks. And
you're like, but when you grow up like that, you're like, shit, like how do I not snack? And then when I was in college, free range, I was like, I'm gonna buy all the snacks and always like just not eat healthy. And like no one, as a kid, you don't really understand the need to eat healthy. Like how beneficial that is to your body. But I mean, that's besides the point of this podcast. But it's not about like making that 360 change like we mentioned in like other episodes. It's just really about little changes. And I think that's what with intrusive thoughts, you just gotta work like day by day, take everything day by day. It's funny because I feel like it's so contradicting. Like we tell ourselves take everything day by day, but we also have to plan out certain things. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you want me to do? That's just another thing that I deal with. Yeah, I also have like scatterbrain, so there's constantly like a million wires whirring. Like, ooh.
I think we all have we can all have the case of scatterbrain from time to time. I know that happens to me too, and I've talked to other people, and it can be a superpower depending on how you use it.
It can be a superpower, but it also can be like, if you think too much about something, you're gonna like almost overthink it. Like there's some people like, okay, we've decided that we're gonna do this way, and then they sit on it for too long, and they're like, oh, we're gonna revamp the whole thing because it's no longer good enough after thinking too long on it.
Yeah.
And I think that I've been someone who's done that where I'm like, okay, like, no, let's change everything. And it's like, no, we don't need to change everything. Like, focus on the problem that was originally at hand,
Yeah.
And I think if you think, it's almost like, I'm not telling you not to think about things, but don't overthink on things.
I mean, there is a level of
that's what happens like with intrusive thoughts, is that you get that thought and then you overthink about that thought. And then you do things that are confirming that thought in your head. So if you're like thinking, I'm a fraud, you're gonna be like, well, yeah, I did that thing, and like, I'm not perfect, and then you're gonna think all these things in your brain that are confirming that intrusive thought.
Yeah.
Like it's in the book that I'm reading too, called The Mountain Is You. It is me. I am the mountain. But it's about self-sabotage, and a lot of times you've heard of confirmation bias. We do that with our own thoughts. Like we confirm certain things in our mind based on things that aren't necessarily fact.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just do anything to confirm what we already think, even if that confirming what we think is a bad thought. Like confirming that we suck, or that we're awful, or that, you are lazy. So yeah, it's about like reshaping all of that, which is, again, it's not an easy process. Also, like there's not like a one size fits all approach, which I also think makes people upset, is that what works for me might not work for you. I watch a lot of content. I listen to a lot of people who have like thoughts on these kind of things too, like on growth and how to get to where you want to be. And maybe some of the things they did won't work for me and what I need.
Or maybe even some of the things that we're saying may not work for you.
Yeah,
too.
and that's okay. It's kind of finding what works for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of all the thoughts I have today on that. Like, one of the reasons I didn't ever get started on this podcast was because
You had intrusive thoughts about it.
Yeah, I had like incredibly like, what if people think I'm stupid, or am I a fraud, or all of these things. And sometimes I still deal with those thoughts. I'm not a perfect human at all. Just because I talk about growth doesn't mean I'm the perfect person who has done all the growing you need to do. I still am very much a work in progress. I'm not where I want to be. But I do think it's important to be vulnerable with people and to be honest about like what you think is possible. And a lot of things I say I think are possible, and I'm actually trying to put into practice myself. I don't want to be that person that like, practice what you preach. I want to be that person that's also like giving this advice based on my experience and not because I'm not putting this stuff into practice. If you've made it this far into the episode, we're so happy to have you here. We are at 98 subscribers
on YouTube.
Maybe by the time this posts, this will be at 100. But it's very exciting for us because, I don't know, it's something I've always wanted to do. This has been a learning process. I'm glad that, I get the opportunity to share my voice online, even if not a lot of people are listening. We all start somewhere, like Steve I always say. And I'm just happy I've been able to do this, and we'll continue to do this in 2023. But yeah. That's been Growing Together with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope... I was going to do the intro again. That's so funny. I was about to do it. We hope to see you again next week. Have a great day, guys.
See you guys later.